And happy Friday. Happy Friday. It is another episode of Black Belts and Boardrooms. And is I hate short weeks. You know, you got a 3-day weekend. The short week is usually the busiest week at work. So I'm always dreading when we come back after a great 3-day week holiday. But I'm looking forward to this interview. Me and Amir have talked about it many times. The person we have on, we are both excited. And Amir, who do we have today?
Renard, I am really excited today. Part of the reason is because how often and how cool it is to have your boss on the show. So this is kind of where I'm going to start from. Is I'm going to say I've had the privilege of watching Angel lead organizations. I've had the honor to work with him in his leadership, and I've learned a few things. Now, I know Angel's a very busy guy, so I'm really privileged today, or I feel really privileged today that he's given us an hour of his day. But I am really looking forward to learning from him. So, Angel, I'll let him introduce himself. But from my perspective, he's somebody who's done some really great things in his career. A lot of work that he's done is also serving the open source and technology community, as well as helping up and coming leaders in the community that he's part of. So for me, I think those are all wonderful things that we all can learn from. So without further ado, Angel, how about we start with a softball? Maybe talk to us a little bit about your origin story, and you can share as much as you like, but just tell us about Angel Diaz, where he comes from, and how you are where you are.
Well, first of all, thank you both for having me here. And thank you, Amir, for such kind words because I work for you and I've learned so much from you. But we'll save that for another day when I'm hosting and you can be the guest. So I'll be on the other window side.
I'd love to.
Look, I grew up in Puerto Rico. I always start with that. I grew up in Arecibo, Puerto Rico. In fact, I was just there. Well, you know that, Amir, a couple weeks ago. That's a farm. So when I kind of look how I grew up on a dairy farm and where I am now, I'm just so happy to be alive and so happy to be where I am because to see the evolution of the world, when I started thinking about technology, actually started in sixth grade when I was just, there's got to be a better way to milk the cows. There's got to be a better way to cut sugar cane, right? And that inspired me to kind of think about tech and technology, and I was so lucky because back then there were professors that would have these seminars at the church that would go to talk about technical topics, and back then computer science was very young, so it was more mathematics and the applications of math and science. And I would show up as a little kid and I'd ask questions. Fast forward, those folks kind of help nurture me, encourage me, go to school, stay in school, focus on math and science, get a PhD in computer science, right? And in my entire career, even up to that point, I've been the beneficiary of others. And then I quickly realized that the fastest path to continue your growth is to pay it forward. So I started doing that. I started doing that when I had the opportunity to join IBM Research, a research institute, and spend 5 years. Where to my left was, Mandelbrot, the guy who invented fractals. And then to my right was Bob Denard, the fellow who invented dynamic RAM. And then there's me sharpening my pencil, right? Kind of figuring out what to do. And then the story after that has been one of learning, of paying it forward, and getting excited about the art of the possible of technology. When you combine the power of people, the power of community, the power of thinking, diverse thoughts, diverse perspectives, use technology as an accelerant and ask that question, what if? And then changing people's lives for good. And so my entire kind of from that PhD on has been focused on that. So whether it's participating in open source communities and learning about technology and contributing back for so many years like I have, or whether thinking about how we can leverage technology to democratize compute storage and network, which the cloud, right? Or, back then it wasn't called the cloud. We were just thinking, can't we just make it easy? To working on the original web standards. And that was all about disseminating math and science, not about, it's NFL time, right? It's not about filling out your fantasy league and using HTTP to kind of go do that, right? So yeah, that's kind of my story. And then here I am now, closer than ever to doing good, which is working in financial services and helping people be responsible with their finances and help them chart a path of longevity. And so it's very satisfying, very, very satisfying career. And I look forward to another couple decades doing more of the same.
That's amazing. So from farm to big city in New York, and you've had quite a run there with the number of accomplishments. Is there one accomplishment that you think of fondly that you come back to and say, this was maybe one of the moments I enjoyed the most of all the things I've done?
Does it have to be one?
You can pick two or three
I'll
if you
give
like.
you two. I'll give you
Okay.
two. I'll give you two. I think, one of the most fond accomplishments, and I love being with people, and I just love, ideating with folks, learning from folks. The best way to learn is to teach, right? Because if you can teach, then you kind of know what you're talking about, because it's quite stressful when you're trying to teach something, right? And then someone asks you a question you don't know, especially if you're teaching in a classroom setting, which I have done and do. I had a particular student, and her name was Renata, and she I kind of helped her when I was teaching, and she kind of ended up working at at IBM, and I kind of served as her mentor and more of an advocate, right? Let's say, advocating for her, working with her, and spent 10 years just regular meetings, giving ideas, brainstorming. And then our paths crossed working on some of the original web standards. And we wrote a patent together. I have several patents. And certainly when you're IBM research, you write a lot of patents. That patent, which was, I would say, more her idea than mine, I kind of came along for the ride, was actually one of those patents that ended up being licensed and cross-licensed across the world. And she became quite famous for some of that seminal work. And she advanced her career orders of magnitude. And I go look back at her, and she's way up here, and I'm down here, and I can say, I worked with her and I paid it forward. So that's one very proud moment that I had. Now I got many more like those, but she, she kind of stood out, kind of amongst many stars in the constellation. Now the other is a little different story. So if you remember back in Puerto Rico, there was a hurricane, Maria, that kind of hit the island. And that kind of took the wind out of me. And that was another one of those moments. If you remember, I was talking about, there's got to be a better way. I'm always asking, it's got to be a better way. It's got to be a better way where we can use technology for good. So I kind of looked at some buddies at work and some folks in open source, Jim Zemlin, who runs the Linux Foundation, some folks at the United Nations. I said, what if we all get together? We get companies, to come together, and we create this kind of, foundation or hackathon where technologists can get together and try to, solve problems, in particular, helping places that have been hit by natural disasters recover faster, or maybe not even get hurt that much right from the beginning. Fast forward about a year and a half of working on that, we launched the very first, and it still happens, it's still running now, Call for Code Challenge. And the very first one had about 80 companies, big companies providing money, United Nations, the Clinton Foundation, right? the Linux Foundation, which was the open source foundation that was hosting the hackathons. And at the time, it was one of the world's largest global hackathons. And this went on for about 6 months. So it wasn't just one moment, right? Many, many participants. And it got so popular that, many of and you asked Renard, well, I know you'll ask at some point what my favorite song is. But there were many artists and celebrities who heard about this and started tweeting and Instagramming about this, right? Which was fantastic for the hackathon. And in fact, the winning idea and implementation, which were these little rubber duckies. Okay, we can talk about that later. Got deployed in Puerto Rico, and to this day, still helping when there's potential overflow of rivers and things like that. So that to me was a really proud moment. It was one of those moments where I asked that question, but I was able to leverage my maturity in understanding how to work with people to actually make something happen and then do something about it. Because there's no way as one individual can do something like that, right? It's a collective. And that was a really proud.
That's an incredible story. So, is there one leader, one mentor, or a group of mentors that have shaped the way you are? Is there one person that you credit?
I am so much like her. It's not even funny. Now it's not all good. There's a little crazy in that, but I'm very thankful. She had so many sayings. She always said, "Hijo, siempre hay alguien detrás de ti, empújalo para frente." Son, there's always someone behind you. Push them forward. The pay it forward concept. She also said, when I was young, they can take anything away from you in life. Your money, your car, your this. They can't take away what's between your ears. Study your brain, focus, whatever your craft is. Doesn't matter what your craft is. It doesn't have to be technology. Try to improve in that craft. Be passionate in that craft. So I would say, now, there's a lot of other ones. And I got to say, my PhD advisor is top on that list. Because think about it. I grew up in Puerto Rico, 17, definitely not mature. From to upstate New York in the winter. And I wasn't prepared for winter. I didn't even have a winter hat. All right. And, back then there was no Venmo. Right. So you got to wait for the check to come in the mail.
Mhm.
If there was a check that was coming in the mail. All right. And my first year in college, he took me under his wings. Crazy Austrian guy, Eric Kaltoff, wonderful human being, very famous distributed computing person in the world. Took me under his wing, basically like a son. Took care of me, nurtured me. No, I had my first publication as a first-year student. He carried me. Okay, he carried me right in that it was a joint publication, right? Taught me how to ski, right? And to this day, still very close. So those are some people, but there are so many folks in my life who I'm lucky to who advocate for me, right? Who give me advice when I need it. And it's not just people who I work for. It's people I work with, Amir, like you, like others, folks in the team, right? It's a two-way street, and you learn in a 360-degree up and down, three-dimensional kind of community.
Man, I feel like, when you talk about your mom, I'm the same way. My mom gave me a lot of great tips over the years, helped me become, the person I am today, just seeing how hard she worked and giving me a space to be able to grow as well. And, the funny thing is I see some synergies going on here. We all got some version of blue on today. I just noticed that. So I know this is a good podcast because of those synergies, but today you're working with Discover Finance Services. What is your day-to-day like working at Discover?
Yeah. So, At Discover, I got the opportunity and the privilege to be really focused on our customer success with technology. Plain and simple. If Discover as a Discover Capital One customer, right? You go in and you use your credit card or your bank, right? You want to be able to get your balance. You want to know that your paycheck has been deposited. You want to go pay for that meal and not be embarrassed because, I don't know, transaction couldn't work because the system wasn't up, right? Not because you don't have money or credit, right? That's kind of my responsibility. Now, to do that, it's not just me, and it's not just Amir, and it's not just my team and the team we work with. It is everybody. It's our call center agents. It's our folks in the business. It's the folks who build the applications, the application development teams. It's the infrastructure teams, the people that manage the cloud, right? So my day-to-day really is at the cross-section of people, process, and technology. And it is this continuous kind of cycle of how can we be better at ensuring that you're successful with technology? Not just kind of making the systems more reliable, which is, of course, the bottom of the Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? You need food, right? As you go up, maybe you want a house. And then as you go up, maybe you want a nice car, right? That's the Maslow hierarchy of needs in psychology, right? And technology, reliability is kind of at the bottom. If you don't got that, you got nothing, right? But if you go to the next step, maybe you want to have a little bit more innovation. Maybe you want to, be able to get credit protection and do some innovation. So this loop that we're in the middle of, right, is not just about making our systems more reliable, but it's also about innovating. It's about understanding what our customers, what humans need, what makes their life easier, what removes friction from their day to day, right? And so we're at a position where we can see that, or we can listen to that, or we can hear that, and feed into that continuous improvement cycle. So that's what my day to day is like.
Continuous improvement. That's something, me working at Toyota Connected, that's something that we definitely is always continuous improvement, Kaizen. So I love hearing that. I love hearing that. And I feel through your journey, etc., what was that pinnacle piece? You've been paying it forward for so long, but what turned in? I feel like I hear and see and talking to Amir that you are a great leader. So what was that change for you that said, "Hey, I wanna lead other people?" Because I always tell people when they're going through their career, being a IC is not bad if you just wanna depend on yourself. You get to do your work, you get to go home, but then you choose to become a leader and see other people grow and pay it forward. What was that point for your career where you decided this was where I wanted to go and start becoming a leader?
Yeah. So I'm going to try to break that into maybe two pieces. One is about, well, let me just start. So I never woke up in the morning and said, I want to be a leader. I didn't wake up, I was at IBM Research with Mandelbrot, Bob Denard, working with folks like Tim Berners-Lee and say, oh, I want to be a leader. There's no way I'm going to lead these people, right? But then, a couple of years in, I had a bunch of PhDs working with me, or leading them, right? In the traditional. How did that happen, right? It happened because I always focused on trying to do more. 1 + 1 = 3 = 11. I like to say. Amir knows that. 1 + 1 = 11. And when you do that, people gravitate. They gravitate to working with you, right? And it just naturally happens. I've never really been focused on around, I need more people, I need more of this. It's about, to me, it's always been about how can I do more good? And if I do that, then the leadership opportunities come. Now, I was a pretty horrible manager because, to your point, going from an individual contributor, especially one at research where it's a pretty individual, although you collaborate, you know, I was happy spending my day with the door closed, thinking, reading Knuth Volume 1, 2, and 3, or the standard template library book, or the C++ book, or the Dragon book on compilers, back in those days, right? I was very happy doing that. That doesn't make a good manager, right? So, like any good rice and beans, or let's say the beans, or if you're Italian, a nice sauce, right? It takes time. It takes time on the stove, right? So over the years, through a lot of mentorship from people that were in my team, let's say, I started to understand what it really means to be present, what it really means to work with others in a positive way, in a way that everybody kind of has the ability to do good, right? And then all of the boats kind of get lifted, right? And that took time. That took time. And there's lots and lots of lessons and moments of maturity that occurred. And it happens, not in days. It happens in years, decades, It takes time. It takes time. Because it's not just reading it in a book, it's understanding it, it's living it and internalizing it, right? And that's kind of the story that I led. But there's a couple of things that, if you don't mind, I'd like to share. Respect. Treat everybody like you want to be treated, right? That's number one, right? Another thing is that I always view everybody as peers. And part of this is my academic background. Part of this is my open source roots. In open source and academia, everybody's smart. There's no, you're band 10 or band 3, or there's none of that, right? So if you have that mental model, right, it becomes easier. It becomes easier for folks to find themselves, to be their authentic selves, and to excel, and put people in positions to excel. And when you do that, and all the pieces are excelling, then everybody excels. So those are a couple of things that I kind of, early on understood, right, and kind of leaned on. But there's so many things, and it took time.
I would say the same
Or,
thing. Oh, go ahead.
and I'm still learning. I haven't reached nirvana yet, by any means. Amir can tell you.
Eh, Well, I mean, I feel like based on your commentary just now, Angel, that maybe I'm getting the better version of Angel.
Oh, you are. You definitely are. 10 years ago, 20, definitely not 20 years ago.
All right. Well, great news for me then, I guess, from that perspective and the team.
Well, 10 years from now, you have hopefully a better version. So you'll be like, oh man, Angel 2.0, 3.0. I wish I had 4.0
Yeah.
if I continue, with an open mind and a growth mindset.
Yeah. So I'd like to pick on that just a little bit more, Angel. I mean, you obviously have very clear direction of who you are and what you want to spend your time doing. What would you tell somebody who is maybe still trying to find themselves? Is there any general advice you would give them? Is there anything you would offer them?
Yeah, that's interesting. I get asked that question, especially because, if you kind of start with my story, it's, I was in 6th grade. I wrote my first operating system. Well, I rewrote an operating system, right? On the good old Commodore 64, which I'm sure you all are very familiar with, right?
Oh, yeah.
And, you could actually rewrite the operating system, right? It's fantastic. Not that safe, but good old, assembly language, go for it. So I didn't really struggle with that. I kind of knew, right? But, in reflection, I think, it's this, if you can find something that you're truly passionate about. I wake up in the morning and I'm excited to go to work, right? I don't have to go to work. I get to go to work. That's a privilege. It's a privilege, right? I get to go to work. And I'm so happy that I get to go to work, right? So happy that I get to go to work. So I do something that I love. If you're fortunate enough to do that, if you're fortunate enough to work with people that you love to work with, wow, those 40 hours a week, which is not 40, it's a lot more than 40, but those 40 hours a week, 9 to 5 that you work, which is most of your life, it's going to be fantastic. So, what do you love? What do you love working with, right? Are you willing to put in the time to get good at it, right? And do you love putting the time to get into it, to get good at it? So, if you think about that and reflect on that, and I love lists, I got lists of lists. So you just not write down those things. What are the things that I love to do? Who do I love to work with? Am I willing to put the time into it? And if you think about those three things, I used one word 3 times. And that word's love. Right? And love can mean a lot of things, but it's really just the heart to me, right? It's what you feel, right? So it's where your heart wants to take you. And if you're fortunate enough to have all those things, then you can wake up and say, I get to go. It's a great choice. Now, not everybody's fortunate to have that. And that's hard. It's hard to find, right? But if you can make it work, or find the love in what you do, or find an aspect of it that you love, kind of, because you can always shape it. You can always shape things, We're not always handed. Trust me, we're all adults here at work. You're not every day is a parade, right?
Yeah.
You're handed a bag to go fix. I love that. Can you find the love? Can you find the innovation in solving that problem a different way, doing better? Right? It may seem like a hard, impossible thing to do. Okay, well, let's figure it out. That makes sense? It's not a direct answer. There's no book. But if you think about in those 3 dimensions, you can start to narrow, you can start to triangulate, right? 3 lines, they'll hit. You'll eventually have some, a target. And then you start refining the target, refining.
Sounds a lot like the Ikigai.
Yeah.
Yeah, Renard and I went through the exercise of the Ikigai in another community that he and I are part of. So, when you say target and coming into it as a circle, that does sound exactly like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, Angel, on on the topic of technology, you talk about we get to be very fortunate, and I agree with that sentiment 100%. So I'm going to pivot a little bit more into technology, and there's a lot of buzz around AI and jobs lately, and I know there's differing opinions out there. Do you have a perspective, just broadly asking about AI and jobs and how it will change the nature of jobs, if there's anything there that you want to share?
So this question is always asked every time there's a technology evolution, and I must say, just to be very clear, that this particular one is pretty impressive. However, there's nothing new there. All right, so let me just rewind. Back when functional programming was a thing. It still is a thing, by the way. But then you move to there was that question of, oh wow, is that going to start? Is automation, right? You work for Toyota, right? Yeah. Is automation going to take away jobs, right? Or is it going to create new opportunity, different things? You go into procedural programming, you go into object-oriented programming on the web, e-business. Right? Ooh, what is that going to take away jobs? It's creating a whole new economy. A whole new economy was created. More jobs. Oh, phone, computer in your pocket. Still using that same technology, right? HTTP, all the same technology. But now you have apps. It's easier. touch more people. A whole other economy was created. I look at Uber and Grubhub and this and that and the other, right? Is a whole other economy was created. Didn't take away jobs, right? Cloud computing, same thing, right? The whole concept of machine learning models and vector computing and neural networks, this has been going on for a long time. I used to program on a massively parallel machine, a lot of these algorithms. Right? Now, there was some interesting insights that occurred within the past 5 to 6 years that kind of and made it easier, right? With TensorFlow and these other technologies to then actually get to a point where AI seems almost like a human, like the Turing test, right? And so there's that question. If I use my AI chat, generative AI application of choice, I'm not going to mention whatever you want it to be, is that going to take away? Well, it will take away categories of things, that's for sure. But will it create new ones? And I would say yes. And then you can go and say, okay, well, how are you so certain that this time is going to create? Well, if you look at the other times, why were new jobs created? We want to monetize. So people spend time thinking about how can they innovate and create the next set of applications or technologies on top of the next layer in that democratization of technology, right? And it's already happening. It's already happening, right? This technology is, the AI technology, machine learning models, the expert systems, generative AI, it's being injected as we speak into so many things and creating new things, which then will create new jobs. And I think that whole kind of notion of innovation, monetization, doing good, right, expands the pie. The pie gets bigger. And if you think of the world as constrained, then you get worried. How do you make the pizza bigger? So that's kind of where I kind of see this going. Now, do I have the answers as to where? No. If I did, I don't know. I'll tell you, we'd be making lots of money right now, right? But I'm certainly doing my part, right, in my domain in financial services. That makes sense.
No, that does make sense. And we talk about, AI on a regular basis. Me and Amir, we feel like AI coming in and keep advancing is just going to create new jobs. We're going to have more higher level jobs going forward. The low hanging fruit's going to get taken care of, etc. So it's interesting that during all the changes we've had, probably what past 30 years, and it's been pretty fast as far as technology and what we do programming, etc. There's always going to be that group that's always a little nervous about it. They're worried, they're not sure about it. What do you think that keeps holding people back, in a sense, that always those warriors that, hey, I'm not sure about X, Y, and Z, I'm not sure about AI coming in. Why do we keep having this apprehension every so often when we have this new technology coming in?
Well, change is hard. Uncertainty is hard. There's a lot of very strong emotions. I often say that the sense of belonging is the strongest emotion. But there's an maybe not equally, but there is a negative emotion that's pretty darn strong, and that's uncertainty and change, right? So belonging is positive, uncertainty, change could be negative. So it's a bit of a mindset thing, right? And it's tough when you don't see, because it's foggy. You don't know for sure, right? You don't know for sure what's on the other side of that AI tunnel, right? Or that cloud tunnel, or that e-business tunnel, or that app tunnel. You don't know what's on the other side. It's cloudy. So it takes faith. Faith, not blind faith, faith in yourself. Faith in yourself and in your colleagues and the communities that you work in around technology. You'll find your way through work, through hard work, through technology, and not magically, got to do the work, right? You'll find your way through the fog, and the fog will become clear, and you'll find your space. Now, can everybody do that? No. You usually end up with a third, a third, a third. This is just it. And when you look at things at a macro level, way up outside of one company, I'm talking the tech industry, it's about the third of the people get it and go. They have the faith, they do the work, they get through. They skill up, they learn, whatever. The other third, you can teach, you can work with. The other third really struggle. They really, really struggle because it's hard. It's hard, right? But they'll eventually make it because it'll become ubiquitous, right? And you can pick up, you can download an SDK, you can do whatever, and it becomes so super, super easy, right? But it takes them a little long. That makes sense?
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I want to delve a little bit more into it just on the discovery side. And this might actually be for both of y'all, since y'all both work for in that area. Since we have AI, quantum computing is coming up. Do you feel discovery is getting prepared for that for the long haul? We're gonna have some, like you say, changes are happening pretty fast. AI is moving a lot faster. Quantum computing is gonna be here. You snap your fingers, gonna be around the corner. So how or you, far as on discovery finance, getting prepared for that?
I'll give a couple of perspectives, and Amir, maybe you can as well. Let me start with quantum. So I was still at IBM when quantum was becoming a thing. In fact, one of the people who was really influential for me going to IBM was a fellow named Bob Suter, uh, who led quantum computing for IBM. Quantum is difficult because it allows you the application from a computer science perspective, programming is tough because you need to think about the problem differently, the algorithm differently, right? It was almost similar to the AI challenge, which is if you wanted to take care, to take advantage of AI, you have to know how to program a butterfly mesh network on a highly parallel machine. That's hard, right? So the question is, how do you make it easy now? We all know what happened on AI, but that hasn't been figured out just yet. So far, where innovations in quantum computing and the applications of quantum computing has kind of been grounded on, has been on more, let's say, numerically intensive things. Approving large integers prime, which are important for security and algorithms and things like that, right? So that's kind of where that's starting. And so I think a lot of organizations across the board, financial services, everybody, that's kind of where they're starting. They're looking at it from that perspective and innovating and trying to understand. And then let's put that in a box. Now, the applications, and and AI is a big word, of AI has been leveraged in organizations for almost a decade now, right? Whether it's looking at fraud modeling, underwriting, in the healthcare industry, right? It's kind of, the whole notion of training models and removing bias from models and those type of things has been happening for a while. So yes, that I think has been going. The more recent, given that it's become, let's say, more accessible, it's opened our minds to, oh, wait a minute, where else can we apply some of this technology, right? So organizations across the board are injecting AI everywhere they can, right? Just injecting it. It's kind of like a turkey baster, just injecting it, right? And then experimenting. and seeing what happens. And across the board, a lot of the results are kind of promising, right? In terms of what you can do. So, for example, at Discover, Capital One Discover, it's very public. If you go to tech.discover.com, you can see a lot of what we do from a technology perspective. But there's a couple blogs up there, some great work that we've been doing around leveraging generative AI in our call centers to help our agents. I got to tell you, going back to that word love, if you're to ask, what word do Discover customers use to describe Discover? It's actually love. And a lot of that is our agents, not me. Okay. We have the most amazing field force. You should call, just have a conversation. They're incredible on what they do, but it's hard work. It's hard work because as easy as we try to make it for them, they got so many screens and this and that and systems. It's tough. It's tough. It's a lot they have to think about in the moment to be as good as they are. Right. So we've done some great work where we've been able to leverage generative AI to help them do their job better and give them more information easier at their fingertips when they need it, when they can't predict it. Because you can't predict what you're going to say. You're just going to have, oh, we need that. Right. Well, so that's one example. All right. But the examples span something as interesting as that, as human as that, to something as maybe not as interesting, but super interesting to probably all of us here on the phone, which is, hey, can we look at patterns of technology defects in our test cases or in our incidents and say, oh, you know what? This particular thing is happening over and over and over again. We have an issue in one of our procedures and our controls for software development. What can we do to improve that? Doesn't sound super interesting, but it's darn interesting because the outcome of that is more customer success, right? With technology. Those are the kind of two perspectives. You've got others.
Yeah. No, I think you've hit some of the major successes that we've had at Discover. You know, the customer success organization and the work that we're doing collectively, I think is, for me at least, one of the examples of how we're cutting across the organization and the customer support, the field work that they do, incredible. You know, I don't think there's too many banks, if any, that can claim that the word love is the most popular word that the customers use. So time and again, I think the call center team is definitely the shining example. But you know, I'll just add one more point, and then I'd like to pivot just a little bit more. So I've always looked at technology as it goes in three phases. There's the methodology phase where you've got academics and people tinkering with ideas. Then you've got the technology phase where now there's implementations of it, not completely refined, but they're there. You can pick up and use it. You know, a precursor example for, you know, for generative AI would be neural networks, for example. And then you reach the platform phase. And then the platform phase is where you start seeing the democratization happen. So I've always looked at it as methodology, technology, and then platform. And then you start that cycle again. The time it takes to go from methodology to platform differs depending on which era we talk about. I think what generative AI has shown us is that, you know, if we look at the past, let's go 30, 40 years back, to time is now compressing even more. So for me, what's exciting about, to your point about quantum computing, is that when that becomes from technical to platform, how's that going to compress this phase even more? So that's the view that I take, you know, as a leader when I think about how does it affect, for example, now I'm leading operations. How can I help my team quickly adjust? Because at the end of the day, people is number one in my book, just like it is for Angel. How can I help our teammates upskill quickly and do it in a time compressed manner because technology isn't slowing down? So that's really, you know, kind of the mindset that I take to that problem.
You know, just on that point, Amir, though, you know, that's very true, right? So, you know, time is being compressed because innovation's quicker. The clock speed is quicker. So then how does, as individuals, we keep up, right? And the good news is that we can. But if you have a job that you love, it's not a job, it's a hobby. Guess what I do on the weekends for fun?
Minecraft.
Yes, I play a lot of video games, but I program and I learn, right? And to me, it's a happy place. Very, very happy place. You know, I can sit there with my daughter and she's in Northwestern now, but put our little headsets on, do what we do. Yeah, it's a happy place. And I'm very fortunate that I get to do that.
So on that point, Angel, Renard and I, we're obviously black belts in our respective martial arts, and we love martial arts. Like, we can't even stop talking about it when he and I are having a conversation. And I shared with Renard that you too have a martial arts background. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I'm a Shodan in judo, so first degree black belt. I started judo as a sport. It's always been a sport to me. That's what I view it as, a sport. Back in Puerto Rico, it was pretty big in Puerto Rico. And I was really fortunate because when I went to college at Rensselaer RPI, the judo club was run by a dojo that was out of the city of Troy, where the level of judo there was pretty darn fantastic. In fact, there was when I was training through my 9 years in college. Now, I got a PhD. 9 years in one place. Just keep it. But I was training with folks who were really good. In fact, one of which won a silver medal in the Olympics. So there is, good, as you all know, and then there's really good. Right, where this guy, Billy Shanahan, who was about 143 pounds, and I was about 209, which is right at my weight level, right, that I had to be, because 1 more pound heavier. Don't want to be with those guys. Right? And he would throw me around like a rag doll. But that elevated my game. Now, am I that good? No. Am I better because I was there? Absolutely. Right? And that's kind of my martial arts kind of story there. Now, I learned a lot, right? Because my sensei at the time, Sensei Kudo and others, they were actually smaller people, and I was bigger. They're 120, 130. So as a bigger person, you can learn big person judo, like big hip throws, big shoulder throws, or you can specialize in foot sweeps. Big people don't see that coming in a competition from another big person. Right. So there's a lot of little lessons and things that just how one evolves in that. But it was a great sport. It's so much fun. And I'm sure you all know about it, right? But it has, I love the dance, the randori, the dancing aspect of it. And obviously the mat work is just, it's like a chess match, and it's fantastic.
I was going to say, and glad to find out that you are, you have a background in judo, because judo and jujitsu are so close together. Even when we train, we're learning judo throws, sweeps, foot sweeps. I love foot sweeps because I'm a big guy and I know I can't actually shoot on someone fast enough so I went to foot sweeps in order to take people down. So I have a lot of respect for judo. A lot of respect. I think it's a great martial art. It goes hand in hand with jujitsu. Same thing for like if you say taekwondo. Judo helps in the taekwondo as well. So much respect for you being a black belt in judo. I would definitely say I would not stand up with you if we were on the mats, just knowing your judo background. I would choose let's get down to the ground as
No.
fast as possible. I would not want to stand up and say, okay, let's see what I could do here. No, I don't want you flipping me in the air or sweeping me. So definitely I would be very cautious.
Well, the benefit is that, if you can do that and get a nice clean throw, you win. Match over. That's 1 point. Match over. I won. At a half point, it's a full point. I don't have to go on the ground, right? Just wait for you to walk to me, and then you're on the ground, right? But yeah, no, it is fantastic. You know, the we would occasionally a jujitsu instructor would come and teach, and it's just scary, right? Because it's like judo stuff, but with the objective of breaking bones. You know, I'm like, oh no, I don't want to do that. You just shift a little bit, and then instead of throwing them, you're breaking their bone and throwing them. Oh, that sounds fantastic. So I never really did that, although we would learn about that. But there's a lot of respect in every martial art because there's some core things, right? It teaches discipline, character, right? Character is a big part of that. Rituals, repetition, right? Getting better through repetition. There's just some fundamental things I think in life that helps you. And every martial art, just as you say, judo, I gotta tell you, I don't know if you ever fought a boxer. It's probably similar to Taekwondo. By the time you get close enough to a boxer, your head's already ringing. It's over. Like I can't even grab you, right? Because my head is buzzing from all the times you've hit me. So there's respect to go around.
I agree with that. I agree with that. Any martial art, like you even say, even boxing, I think you look at it as anyone who decides they're gonna train as long enough to become a black belt or box for 20, 30 years. That's something that a lot of people, I would say, can't do, and that's consistency. To say you're gonna take years into your life and I'm gonna keep training, I'm gonna get a black belt, and then with some people continue to train even after that's something to consistency. That's saying I'm gonna do something that's very difficult, that's very uncomfortable, and I'm gonna do it for years. I'm gonna do it for years. I tell anybody, and I'm sure you have, Angel, and you, Amir. When I started jujitsu, there was many times that I probably wanted to quit at some time. Like, man, this is hard. This is difficult. But making it to black belt and understanding the years of consistency and saying I'm gonna do something that's very difficult, you see that expand in other people's careers. People who do great in martial arts, most of the time do great in their careers because they understand consistency and continuous improvement like we were talking about earlier.
I was
So
going to say that, and you
yeah.
said it before. I had that. I was like, I was a jump hook. That it's a never-ending journey. You can continuously improve until you're dead, right? And you will never get there, right? Because you could always get better, right? You could always do the kata better. You could always perfect something, right? And so, yeah, just like work, always get better.
Although I think in martial arts, though, Angel, we talk about when times get difficult, that resiliency is taught in martial arts every time you show up on the mat.
That's right. It takes a lot of guts to show up on a mat, whether it's practice or certainly competition. I usually don't get nervous. I speak engagements that, I mean, I think you at Chicago, we had the KubeCon. I did a keynote. It's like 20,000 people, 25. It's fine, easy, right? Because look, I step on a mat for a competition. I am really nervous. It's bad. It takes a lot of guts to.
I
Yeah.
say the same thing. Anyone who decides they're going to train, whatever that, even sports. I tell anybody when I
Or
hear,
same thing.
yeah, hear somebody play sports. We've had people on here who've made it to the NFL, even if it's practice squad. I got to give you your flowers for that because not everybody can make it to that part. So same thing when it comes to martial arts. You step on the mat, you're doing better than someone else sitting on the couch. That's what
That's
I tell people. You just did a lot better than someone stepping on the couch, and then you choose, I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna keep coming back. I'm terrible at it, but I'm gonna keep coming back, and
With
then all
all
of a sudden you
aches and
start seeing,
pains.
yeah, I'm gonna take the pain, I'm gonna deal with that, and then all of a sudden you start seeing yourself get a little bit better each and every other day. That it starts to turn around. I get a little bit better. Iron sharpens iron, etc. So definitely, I tell most people take a martial art. Doesn't matter what it is, whatever you want to do, take a martial arts because it will help you in your professional and your personal life as well. So I tell a lot of people that. So much respect, Angel, for you taking judo. I can tell that your leadership and paying it forward. I can tell that you are a great leader. I would work with you easy just by us having this conversation. So definitely I will say thank you for being on our podcast. But before we go, I was going to ask you this question, and I ask everybody, what's that music that gets you ready for the day? If it's going to the office, if it's, before you get on playing some video games, coding, etc. What music do you have in your ear when to get you ready?
That is such a hard question because, so one of my hobbies is I actually DJ as a hobby. I've been DJing. I used to work at a radio station in college. I used to program direct, and I used to go do DJs at parties. And I still, now with technology, it's like unbelievably cool, right? The things that you can do in terms of producing music or live, right, with AI, and we're something called stems, right, within DJ. So I have a very broad musical spectrum of things that I enjoy. Everything from electronic music, old and new, you know. But if I have to pick one, it's going to have to be something in the Puerto Rican realm, right? And of course, just in Puerto Rico, Bad Bunny's doing a residency right now, right? So it's freaking bananas over there, right? But I'm not going to go with Bad Bunny, although it is quite good. I'm going to go with Mark Anthony, and Mark Anthony does a lot of salsa. I love salsa. I love dancing to salsa, and he has a song called "Vivir mi vida," live my life, and it's a beautiful song. And I've played that a couple times walking into the office. So there you go. I'll go with that for today. We'll see what tomorrow is, but today that's what.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I'm actually gonna have to play that once we get off here. I'm gonna have to listen to it. I haven't listened to some of that in a while, but definitely I love the choice. We are so grateful and thankful that you came on today and spent some time with us. And I will say to our Black Belts and Boardrooms listeners, we will see you on the next one.
Thank you.